Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Growing Younger, a webinar on the secrets learned from Blue Zones. I'm Nicole Young, the marketing coordinator for Private Vista, and I will be your moderator for today. Before we get started, as always, I want to share a little bit about my firm, Private Vista, clue you in on some webinar housekeeping, and introduce you all to our guest speaker today. So starting off with, who is Private Vista? Well, we are a financial planning and wealth management firm in the Chicagoland area. We manage approximately $2.5 billion of assets for our clients, and we have offices in both downtown Chicago and Oak Brook. We specialize in working with business executives, business owners, women in transition, retirees, families, qualified plans. To learn more about our firm, please feel free to visit us at myprivatevista.com. Next, I'm just going to give you guys a little lowdown on what's going to be going on today. So first off, you'll notice that you're going to be muted for the duration of the presentation. This is just to make sure that everyone can hear our guest speaker clearly. We usually try to make our webinars pretty interactive, but because we only have 40 minutes and our guest speaker will need to fill you in on a lot of interesting information, I'll be stepping back during this webinar after my introduction is over, and our guest speaker will be giving a full presentation herself. But if you need any technical help or have any questions, I will still be on the call. So feel free to send me a message using the chat function. I'll be happy to assist you for the duration of the webinar. Lastly, if you do have any questions to ask Luz, we are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar. So hold on to those questions and I will let you guys all know when it is time for the Q&A and we will be able to get those questions answered. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for the day, Dr. Luz Feldmann. Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. So Dr. Luz Feldmann is a physician dedicated to pain management and longevity medicine. Feldmann has been in practice since 1986 after graduating from medical school in Columbia. She completed a family residency and internship in Chicago and transferred to anesthesiology, graduating from Indiana University in 1993. Feldmann has dedicated the last 18 years to pain medicine exclusively and the last 4 years to functional medicine. Her highest interest right now is longevity medicine, or how to grow younger every day. She's always her first patient. Feldmann has been happily married for 30 years to her husband, Joe, and has 2 wonderful grown children, Michael and Anna. So thank you so much for joining us today, Luz, and I'm going to have you take it away.
Thank you so very much, everybody. I just want to make sure that the sound is okay. Nicole, you will let me know if there is any problems.
You're great.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Growing Younger Every Day. It's very exciting for me to show you what I have learned from the Blue Zones. And as you see, my background is one of the Blue Zones, Nosara, Costa Rica. And this particular room that you see here is one of my favorite places in the world. Is the yoga room and the Qigong room in that particular place. We are going to, as Nicole said, I have dedicated the last few years of my life, and it's my next career. My next 50 years in practice are going to be dedicated to longevity medicine because I want to know and I want to be able to teach to my patients what it means to grow younger instead of older. And we gathered all this information from what it is, the Blue Zones. So let's get going. As I said, I am right now doing a practice and a program about, it's called Turning Back Your Biological Clock, based on the Blue Zones. And here is my information. And if you ever want to be part of it, please don't hesitate to contact me. In the practice of longevity medicine, we start with a very basic principle. And this is the one. It's very different than what you might have heard from up to this point. And it is that we want to let your food be your medicine, your kitchen be your pharmacy, and your lifestyle be your physician. This is a very, very old principle, but as you are going to see tonight, it is what makes the Blue Zones what they are, the Blue Zones. In 1999, this journalist started looking what was the secret of the areas of the world that had the longest living beings, the longest living human beings. And the question was, what is the secret to live a long and healthy life? I wish I could see you all, and I wish I could ask you, what do you think it is? But in the blue zones, we find the answer. There are 5 regions of the world that have the largest percentage of individuals above 100-year-olds. So they went to look at what make them that way, what kind of people they have, and what is it what they have really in common. Those 5 places were at that time, remember it's 1999, so it's almost 20 some years, Loma Linda, California, Nicosia in Costa Rica, which is where I have been personally and where this picture is from, Sardinia, Italy, which has the highest amount of men, older men over 100 years old, Ikaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. And in Okinawa, Japan is the place that has the highest amount per capita of women living above 100 years old. So Loma Linda, California, why? What they found out is that it is the home for the Seventh-day Adventist, that they follow a vegetarian diet, regular exercise, that they avoid alcoholic beverages, that they don't smoke, and that they definitely live much longer, about 10 years longer than the average American person. The one that I was talking about, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, it is an area of Costa Rica in which people maintain a very active lifestyle, emphasize faith, family, community. The diets consist primarily of rice, beans, beef, fish, chicken, but very, very little, minimal to no intake of processed or refined foods. The Nicoyans are twice as likely to reach the age of 90, and particularly men present with much less cardiovascular risk biomarkers, and both women and men have much better functional abilities and cognitive abilities with much less dementia. Sardinia, Italy, is the home to the longest living men in the world. As I said, they are a little bit culturally isolated, and they kept very traditional, healthy lifestyles. They still hunt, fish, and harvest the food they eat. One of the things that the blue zones have in common is that they eat very much what they are able to harvest. So we could say that they don't import as much of the foods, and eating more of the local foods have a number of different advantages, especially in the health of your bowel. They all engage in regular physical activity, daily natural movement, and we are going to learn what these mean in a few minutes. Hold on, sorry. The diets are mostly plant-based, abundance of vegetables, fruits, beans, and whole grain bread. You could say this is somewhat of the Mediterranean diet. In Ikaria, Greece, very much they have the tradition of family values and longevity. Most of the Icarians are entirely free of dementia, and many of them are very much free of chronic diseases, which are the hallmark, unfortunately, of the American society. What I mean by chronic diseases, we're talking about high blood pressure, high cholesterol, cardiovascular diseases, a stroke, degenerative diseases of the brain, such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, just to mention some. Most of the people in Icaria, they have a mostly plant-based diet. They engage on daily physical activity. They socialize with friends and family frequent. They don't smoke. And interesting enough, they enjoy midday naps. They enjoy as well red wine, but the red wine is usually with a meal and never alone. They play games in the evening and towards the night. And of course, they play games with somebody else or in community. 6 out of 10 individuals over the age of 90 participate in a physical activity, including walking and other moderate intensive activity. One of the things that these blue zones have in common is that these people, again, have a lot of activities in the garden, and that they plant and cultivate their own food. Okinawa, Japan. Okinawa, Japan is one of the places that has been at most studied because it's the home of the longest living women on earth. They have a strong dedication to friend and family. They have an enormous, powerful social network. They call it a moai. These people in general live in multi-generational homes, what means that they have always a purpose. They come up with a word that is called the ikigai. And for those of you who would like to know what the ikigai is, I highly encourage you to email me and I will send you what that means. But what it really means is to find your purpose in life. And having a purpose is one of the things that makes the most difference of how long do you live. These women in Okinawa don't have disabilities or illnesses as we know here. And like I said, they have very little, if any, dementia, and as well as any cardiovascular diseases. This is very common for all these 5 areas of the world. So they studied these people. And again, based on that studies is what I have developed this program. It's called Turning Back Your Biological Clock. Based on the blue zones, a lot of research has come out of them. A lot of work has come, and today we have an enormous amount of tools, and we know so much more of what can we do daily to really turn back our biological clock. I say I'm at the first patient because when I came to realize that I am aging, I wanted to know, and in general, I do on myself everything that I would recommend to my patients. One of the things that we learned, or one of the many things that we learned, is this, in general, power of 9, and they are life-changing habits. That is what helps us developing what the tools of what makes us young. So as you see here, you move naturally. I would like to very much to emphasize this with you, because as we heard from the Blue Zones findings, all of these people walk, they don't drive. They do quite a bit of things on a daily basis that demands for them to walk. Nowadays, we say that sitting is the new smoking. And for those of you that unfortunately spend most of your time in front of a computer, I highly recommend that you really think about this. We unfortunately live in a society or in an area in which we don't walk, we drive everywhere. And that's one of the big differences of all these 5 places. They walk everywhere. And most of them, if any, they do not drive. We do have a purpose. As I said to you, and I'm going to jump the hoops here, and I'm going to tell you the clue of long and happy life. And after everything that they study, the 2 or the key words for a long life and a great longevity is to belong and to matter. So the purpose and the ikigai is one of the most important, to belong and to matter. When you have a purpose, when you matter, when you serve, when you help, when you have a reason to live and a reason to be happy, things will become that way. I can teach you how to find your ikigai. The downshift is the management of stress. And what we basically, and going back to the belong is down here because that's what we, that's what they develop, and that's what one of the things, the most things that they found in those 5 zones. They belong to the loved ones, they belong to a tribe, they belong to a community, they belong to a group, they belong to. Then we not only we want to move, we have to connect, we have to belong somewhere, we have to have a purpose, but we have to manage our stresses. So the downshift here goes about managing the stress. And unfortunately, because we live in a very high, powerful, fast moving society, we have to become, or we have to learn how to come to this point. This last part of the Power of 9 Healthy Life Habits of the zones had to do with what we eat. So as you heard me already, you heard me that most of these people eat a plant-based diet. None of the 5 zones are vegetarian. Some of them have some amount of fish, chicken, and even beef. They have, but they are not high processed foods, and they are very locally produced and maintained. Ideally without so much toxins or without so much pesticides and any hormones and things like that. So those are the type of foods that we have to learn to eat. But there is much more than only what you eat. What we have learned, and I'll tell you in a minute. Let's talk about the natural movement. I said, and I will get back with you about not only what we eat, but how we eat it. As I told you before, all these patients, these people did natural movement. Again, gardening, walking, climbing. They did not drive. Again, they did have the sense of purpose. And it is interesting about the lessons from them. Not only the ikigai, because the ikigai is what answers to the questions of why do I wake up in the morning? Why, and it's not so much why as how can I contribute to my world today? And not only about that, but to be grateful for what we have, how to have a positive attitude about what it comes. And as I mentioned here, the knowing your sense of purpose is worth up to 7 years of extra life expectancy. The stress management and in the program that I have developed as a turning back your biological clock, we do learn a number of techniques to decrease the stress. So all of these people in the zones had some way of coping with stress. As you remember, in Icaria, one of the things they did was to have a mid-afternoon nap or an early nap. Some of us are good nappers. I was born in Colombia. I was raised with the Spaniard tradition of naps. All my life, when I went to my grandparents' home, we would have lunch and we would have a nap. But the nap was never more than 20 minutes. So it would not interrupt in our dinner time and our bedtime. And even now, I have a place to take a nap in my office. If I feel tired, I would do that because it is rejuvenating to the most of my cord. Many of these people in these zones, including especially the one in Loma Linda, had a tradition and a discipline or a custom of praying. And the prayer was a part of their daily living. I truly believe that for some of you or some of us, praying will be a way of meditation. There are other meditations. There are meditations that are guided. I do practice and teach to my patients the meditation based on box breathing and using your breathing and controlling your breathing to bring down your nervous system. I teach you how we have two different nervous systems, and one is the sympathetic, one is the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is the one that becomes so aware of danger and is so high and gives us anxiety and that makes us worry. And the parasympathetic, which is the one that calms it down. So I teach you how to activate your parasympathetic so you can learn how to bring down your stress. And as you see by now, we've been talking together about already 15 minutes, and I have not mentioned any medications or any pills, because let the food be your medicine, your lifestyle be your physician. So that's what we want to teach you. We want to teach you to do the things and to incorporate habits in which you can very effectively, because it works. I can guarantee you that it works. You can bring down your stress. The other thing that they do to bring down the stress is really attending a happy hour with friends. So the happy hour, we think that it's about to drink. Well, they make very clear that you don't drink alone, number one. Number two, that you don't drink a lot. And actually, some of the blue zones do not have incorporated alcohol. Some of you have heard about the studies in which a glass of red wine improves the cardiovascular condition of men. In men, the studies have decided that the most that they can drink is 2. It has to be with dinner and it has to be in community. For women, we can only drink 1 and in the same condition. And if we decide to drink more, then we increase our risks for cancers. This is what I was looking for, the 80% rule. So it's not only about what we eat, but it's about when we eat and how much we eat. So a clear message from the blue zones are, number 1, you eat whole foods, ideally local foods, mostly vegetables and fruits, very little meats, and definitely not processed foods. So in my program, I teach you what this means. And if you only want to keep one and only one thing to remember tonight, I would like you to remember this picture. because it is that you are going to eat only 80%. You are not going to get totally full, and that you are going to eat mostly vegetables, and that they have to be colorful. And if you want to do only one thing that you would like to implement starting tonight, is that when you look at your plate, you see a rainbow. You see the colors of the rainbow because the foods that you are eating have deep, intense colors. And they are natural, and they are not processed. They are mostly vegetables. And you could think to yourself, I could actually have more, but I will not. And it's definitely the best way. Based on the studies from the blue zones, a lot of things have come up about intermittent fasting, which is restricting the amount of time that we eat. And there are several different types of intermittent fasting that some people benefit from the other. What we know from the blue zones and what we know from the studies after the blue zones is that intermittent fasting is very, very helpful to regenerate, rest, and recover the vitality and the quality of your cells. So in my program, I teach you exactly that, how to do it, what is best for you, how to take advantage of it, how to enjoy it. We do, as I said, a plant-centric diet. And here is where I can tell you that, and we talked about this, we talked about the fact that all of these people did plant-centric diet, but they went on fish, they went and did meat and things like that. But most of it, we unfortunately have been used to eating the vegetables as a side dish. And what we need to learn, and I can teach you how, I have to say now, thankfully, I have been able to incorporate that, but you can learn and you should learn that the vegetables are your main course. The little bit of protein, which is usually should be around 6 ounces a day, or a meat protein, should be your side dish. And again, I can teach you all about this. Vegetarians, you don't have to be a vegetarian. You can just incorporate more of this. The wine, we talked about the wine already. The wine is a good thing for men, and usually red wine, which is the one that has the resveratrol. And the other one is the issue for men, no more than 2 glasses, always with somebody. For women, unfortunately, really is 1 glass, and it has to do, it has to do with the fact that you increase cancers after that. I can teach you how to incorporate alcohol, although really I'm not the biggest fan of that because the alcohol consumption does not truly increase your lifespan. It has to do more, in my opinion, with the resveratrol, which is one of the substances that you can get from other foods, and it has to do with the fact that you are in a community and that you are sharing your life with others. Here we are, the social networks. They always have this centenarian of these blue zones are always taking and participating in groups and doing social connections. This has to do enormously with the health and longevity of your brain. So when we grow up, we learn certain things in our brain, but the more interaction we have with other people, the more connections, the more neuronal connections we can do in our brain, especially when we have to interact with them in definite and different situations. Ideally, what we want to see, and again, I can teach you how to incorporate this on you. What we can do is to learn a new skill and ideally to learn a new language, to learn a new instrument, or basically to be able to have different type of conversations for different people. Because the more you interact with these people, the more you have to pay attention and the more you have, it is unpredictable what they are going to say. Those games or those activities that you know well, that you can predict how it end, not necessarily stimulate and rejuvenate your brain. So this was very, very important for this group of people. You can imagine that the idea is not only, and the studies were very clear in the blue zones, it was not only to find what makes them live longer, is what makes them live longer healthier. And the studies of the blue zones came up with a different concept of a lifespan, and it is a health span. So the lifespan is how long do you live? The health span is how long you live a healthy life. And as you heard me before, in all those 5 zones, these people did not have dementia and did not have the chronic diseases that make up for the last 20% of your life in the American society. So here it is how our goal, or my goal, at least for my patients and myself, is to do whatever changes I need to do now based on skills and habits that could get me to that point in which my health span is very, very close to my lifespan. And I tell my patients that my objective in life is to die healthy. The spirituality became one of the most important findings of the blue zones studies. Most of them had a faith-based community and religious affiliations. They went to church and they had a strong spiritual connection. This is not new. I think that this has been shown for a long, long time. It's one of the, what I want to say, risk factors or factors that make you younger. Many, many years ago, before we knew about the blue zones, there was a anesthesiologist, actually, he's still writing books and all the stuff, it is Dr. Michael Rosen, and he did a book called Your Real Age. And in the real age, you can score a number of different things or risk factors or behaviors that you have. And he will tell you how much older you are or how much younger you are. And it was quite interesting because if you went to church, he will give you a score of 3 years younger. And the reason for that is because, number one, you have the faith to help you through the troubled times, number one. And the second thing is that you had as well the sense of community. And again, we want to see you and remind you that the key of longevity is to belong and to matter. So all of those things that happen in the people who have a strong faith and a strong spirituality is what has proven once again with this study that it is very important. The other part of the study that it was very, very clear in the blue zones was the fact that the centenarians in the blue zones put their families first. Most of them were really on multi-generational families. And that is the one thing that is very different of the American society. We assume that our children are going to leave the house at the age of 18 when they go to college, and then they're not going to come back. But in these blue zones, the fact that the older people were there not only give them purpose, but allow them to share their knowledge, their wisdom, and help with the raising and the decreasing of the stress within the family. Besides that, help with the taking care of the children themselves. So it's so in the studies, they saw that the mortality rate and the illness within the children were even less. So all of this is important. I'm not so sure I want to live with my children and my parents are no longer with me. So it's not necessarily that I want to do a multi-generational life itself, but what I would like to change within my patients, within myself, and everybody who wants to learn is the concept that as we get older, we have more to offer. Our wisdom, our experience, our ability to see things in a different way can help the younger generations. The ability to teach, and again, it's a back and forth benefit because not only I benefit from being able to teach, for being able to have a purpose, but the younger people can learn as well. So I encourage you all to think carefully about this because we live in a society that doesn't necessarily value older people. However, and most of them is because our older population or that older people are ill. A lot of them have diseases, chronic diseases. So again, if we do those changes now when we stop growing, so we stop growing when we are 25 and from then on we are aging. So when we stop growing, if we can make differences and changes of how are we going to become when we are 90 or 100, then things are going to be a lot better. My job in the practice really is to teach you, to give you a specific areas of your life that we can change this. That's the program, turning back your biological clock. And again, here is my information. And we have, I mean, the blue zones, as you have seen, has taught us the principle, the basic areas that we can work. But then this is where we have to learn and study it a lot more, or to be able to apply it to our daily life. This is why I wanted to go back to the main areas, and is this. My workshop and my class is designated now to improve what you move, how you move, what you do, to help you developing your purpose, to control the level of stress you have, My program has so much to do with how much you eat, what you eat, when you eat. So we learn about this. There is a word, it's a nomenclature thing. It's called SAD, S-A-D. SAD is a standard American diet. So most of my patients that want to learn how to get younger every day, grow younger every day, have to learn why the American diet is really SAD, standard American diet. And it is because I teach them and help them understanding how you're going to get to the 80% plant-based and very little, if any, alcohol. But most important, what you eat, when you eat, how much do you eat? We learn in the session, in the program as well, things that we can do to improve our belonging and our community. How can we really put in place the things that improve our brain health? And one of the things that in the blue zones, they did not study, but definitely are a big deal nowadays is our relationship from longevity and ability to sleep. And you hear hundreds and hundreds of commercials and things about how it's so important to sleep better and all this stuff. And that it comes out to the part as well of managing stress. And the program includes as well a very specific module about teaching you and improving your ability to sleep and how can you do. We think, and again, the blue zones were studied in 1999. I visit Nicoya in Costa Rica once a year for several years. It's a beautiful place, and you do feel the change of the environment and the change of the food. And it makes you feel hopeful for a future in which the whole world will be a blue zone. I think that is something that I would highly recommend to all. I tell you that the program is very successful, how people improve their health span. I have experienced it myself, and I highly, highly recommend it. 20 years have passed, and a lot of research has come out of the blue zones, and it is available for you. So I will hope that this webinar just is provoking thoughts on you all, and that you will feel motivated at some point to really look and implement the things that will make you have a health span as close as possible as your lifespan. And with this, I'm going to ask you to have some time for questions, so we will not go over the time. Is that okay, Nico?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the presentation, Liz. That was wonderful. And we definitely have time for some questions. And I actually have a couple that came in while you were talking. So we can just kick off with those if you don't mind.
Yes, sure.
Okay. And before I do ask those questions, I want to let everyone know on the call that you do have the opportunity yourself to also ask a question right now if you would like. And how we will manage that is if you do have a question, go ahead and use that raise hand function that is at the bottom of your screen. Wave around, move around your mouse, and you'll see a little hand pop up. Go ahead and click on that if you have a question. I will unmute you and you can ask your question directly to Luz. But I did have some come in, so for the time being, I'll go ahead and ask some of those questions. And if anyone does so happen to raise their hand, I will unmute them and allow them to ask the questions. And if anyone has any questions on how to do that, go ahead and message me and I can fill you in. So while our folks on the call, if they decide to raise hands or not, are figuring out if they want to do that, I'll go ahead and ask you some of those questions that came in. The first one was actually more about intermittent fasting and what that means. Like, can you explain what intermittent fasting is and about how people do that in blue zones?
So in the blue zones, the people in the blue zones are very characteristic by the fact that they follow one principle, and it is that they rise up with the sun and goes down with the sun. For example, in Nicosia, in Costa Rica, they are in the middle of the Caribbean, so they have a 12-hour day and a 12-hour night. So what happens is that they rise when the sun rises and goes down when the sun goes down. And they eat no more than 12 hours a day. So while the sun is up, okay? So one of the definitions of intermittent fasting is that you are going to limit the amount of hours that you eat during the day. So in the blue zones, most of the people had only for 12 hours. So if you have breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, the latest bite that you're going to have is about 8 p.m. In reality, what we would like to see is that for men, that you eat only for about 8 hours. So if you eat between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 p.m., or if you eat between noon and 8 p.m., and that you don't eat closer than 3 hours to your sleep. That's another way of intermittent fasting. For women, it is about 14 hours. So that's in general the way of doing intermittent fasting. There are other just much fancier ways to do intermittent fasting, and we can, if you want to contact me, I will teach you about that. But ballpark, this is the general thing.
Wonderful. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it. Our next question is going to be about that 80-20% rule. Are you able to just explain it just a little bit more in depth, if you don't mind?
Yes, that's the one thing that is very peculiar, and it takes a lot of work. The 80% is that you will eat only to 80% of being full. So you are not going to eat until you are stuffed. So for example, the famous time of being stuffed is after the Thanksgiving meal. And there's the one thing that you want to avoid. All of these people ate less. And actually, there were some studies not done in the blue zones, but some other studies about longevity in which they proposed calorie restriction. And there were some people who said that if you eat only about 600, 800 calories a day, that you will live a lot longer, you know. But it's basically, I don't propose such a thing. I just think that we all should eat slowly enough so we feel when we are about 80% full and do not go beyond that. And that's really what they found, that they were. None of the people in the blue zones, in general, none of them were obese, because obesity accounts for one of the most important chronic diseases of the United States and modern societies. So they were not. And one of the reasons is because they don't eat as much.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm a very slow eater, so that's good to learn that is
That's the key.
I think
Absolutely.
all of my friends would argue it's a terrible thing to eat with me, but good to know I'm on the healthier side. So we do have another question, of course, around diets, and that is, can you just give an example of what a Mediterranean diet would consist of for like a full Mediterranean diet meal? Or
yeah, the thing about it, the Mediterranean diet is in general a lot of vegetables, very little fruits, and the fruits are mostly berries, and very good fats. So the Mediterranean people eat feta cheese, olives, lots of olive oil, coconut. They eat seeds, nuts, almonds, pecans, cashews, and they eat very little food, meat. And out of the meats that they eat, their most important meat is fish. So that really helps with what they is the Mediterranean diet. It has a lot of fiber too.
Absolutely. And then I have just one more question here before we wrap up. It seems that, yep, just one more question. And that question is, how can I get more information about implementing these principles? Like how do we implement these into our lives?
So I am going to, hold on. Again, what I would suggest is you get in contact with me and voice your interest into becoming part of the Turning Back Your Biological Clock workshop. It is a very well designed program, and you will learn the tools that you will need to implement to your own specific life. Because what happens is that we see the principles, we have heard the principles, we are bombarded by these principles. If you are a health nut, you will see it in every single YouTube and every single Facebook and every single, all those things. But you don't necessarily know how you do go about and how do you want to implement it for you, for your own specific things. So that's what I do. I teach you guys how to implement these things and how to know where your real age is and to set up some goals of how you want to do and what you become later on. How to eat well, when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat, and how to implement the issues of stress, of finding your purpose, of moving and doing much more of the exercise, and how to get healthier. That's what the series is all about, becoming healthier.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you for answering that, Luz. And it seems that, so I'm out of questions that were submitted during the event, and it looks like no one has raised any hands. So I think we are going to go ahead and just wrap up here. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who submitted questions during the event, everyone who attended, and I hope that you really enjoyed our webinar and the knowledge that you gained, and that it can help you take some steps forward towards a healthier lifestyle. I want to say thank you to Dr. Feldmann. Thank you so much, Luz. Thank you for joining us this evening, and I hope that you enjoy your rest of the night, and everyone else on this call does as well.
All right. Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Nicole, for inviting me. It has been really, really wonderful. And I take it that you are recording and the people who register will get it. So absolutely. I'll be looking forward to any type of comments or questions that you may have. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Right. Have a great rest of your night.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you.